All right, my juniors and seniors, let's talk commas to end the day, or to end the lesson, I should say here. We should note this video will likely be a little bit longer just because there are a lot of comma rules that we'll cover within our notes today. I say notes, it's up to you how many notes you take, but I do recommend that you take your own notes as I teach through the comma rules in this video. There is a practice assignment right below the video in our lesson folder here. It's not due until midnight Sunday night because I know some of you are still working on your college application essay proposals right now as well. Next week, starting on Tuesday, grammatically we're going to move on to discussing word choice a little bit. I thought about doing sentence structure next week, but since things got shifted around a little bit in the schedule, it makes a lot of sense for us to talk word choice first, and that does impact our college application essays as well. We'll hit sentence structure once we're back in the classroom together. And like I said in our last video, next week is for drafting college application essays, so I'll give you some time and space to do so. Let's look through some commas here. Comma notes. And that PowerPoint shows up perfectly within my screen. This is a PowerPoint that I have borrowed from the online writing lab at Purdue University. They call it the Purdue OWL Online Writing Lab, OWL. Purdue OWL is one of the best grammar resources on the entire internet. So if you have questions about any specific grammatical topic, I highly recommend that you search it on Purdue OWL. Feel free to ask me first, but a good online reference for you when it comes to any sort of grammar or formatting questions you might have. Purdue OWL is wonderful. This is a presentation they made called Conquering the Comma, and they start by covering the basics of what a comma is, but then this presentation also covers several rules in English that govern how commas are used. I noted several comma errors in a lot of the writings I've seen so far for this class. It's understandable. There are a lot of rules for commas. You learned some of them in English 1, a couple more in English 2. We're going to try to master them completely this semester in Writing Workshop. As you guys know, a comma is a punctuation mark. It's a little hooked mark right there that indicates a pause in a sentence. So wherever you hear a pause in speech, it's either got to be an end mark or a comma. Commas help to clarify meaning for the reader, and we'll see why as we talk through this presentation. I should note, if you're taking notes, feel free to pause this video at any point. For the sake of writing things down, you certainly do not need to write every single word from what you see here, and you do have access to this PowerPoint on your own. Clauses. This should be a review from what you covered in English 1 and English 2, but it's good to review it this year as well. A clause is a group of words that contains both a subject and a verb that complement one another. So, two types of clauses, as you note. There's dependent clauses. They're like little babies. They cannot stand alone on their own. They'll die if they're on their own. Independent clauses are like adults. They can stand on their own. They're strong-willed. They still make sense as complete sentences on their own. If you have a dependent clause, like a baby, you need an independent clause like a parent in order for things to work. However, independent clauses can also stand alone. A phrase, which also gets governed by commas, is a group of words that does not contain both a subject and a verb that complement one another. So a phrase can contain your subject, but it can't contain your subject and your verb. A phrase can contain your verb, but it cannot contain both your subject and your verb. We'll look at some comma rules governing phrases in a bit here. First major comma rule that you guys already know, but it's good to review, are compound sentences. You create a compound sentence when you have two independent clauses, and you join them together using a coordinating conjunction. You probably know those better as the Fanvoice conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. The reason why we want to memorize those 7 conjunctions is that they are the only 7 that can be used to form a compound sentence. Conjunctions, as you guys know, are words that join words, phrases, and clauses together in a sentence. What the Fanvoice conjunctions do in compound sentences is they take 2 independent clauses and they join them together, usually right in the center, along with a comma. The comma in a compound sentence is placed before the Fanvoice conjunction, before the coordinating conjunction. So if one of our independent clauses is Andy built a snowman, and the other one is Jeff played with his dog, we can use that comma and in the center there to bring them together. Notice that the comma comes first, right after snowman, then your Fanvoice conjunction and then your other independent clause. Where would you place the comma in the following sentence? Take a moment to do that on your own, and I'll show you where I would place mine. The sentence says, Dan struggled with his homework, so his father helped him. I hope you are able to hear the pause in that sentence. That pause, that natural pause, is where that comma goes. This one's going to be comma so right here. Independent clause number 1, Dan struggled with his homework. Again, that works as a complete sentence all by itself. His father helped him is another independent clause. And right in the middle, hooking them together, is that comma so to bring them together. The other type of clause, as you guys know, is the dependent clause. Dependent clauses still contain subjects and verbs, but the clause can't stand on their own because they use what's called a dependent clause marker. You might know it better as a subordinating conjunction. The acronym that I like to use for subordinating conjunctions is WASABI, W-A-S-A-B-I. It should be noted, WASABI does not cover all the subordinating conjunctions. There's like 34 subordinators. WASABI covers the major ones. So W is for question words, along with whether. So it includes when, whenever, where, wherever, what, whatever, while as well. So there's a lot of W words. The first A is for as. The S is for since. The other A is for after. B is for before and because. And I is for if. Obviously, that doesn't cover all of them, once again, but it covers a lot of the major ones if you're looking for a way to remember some of those major subordinating conjunctions. There is one comma rule that impacts dependent clauses. This one's a little more complex. When a dependent clause is placed only at the beginning of a sentence, you place your comma between the independent clause and the dependent clause, and you can hear the pause when you read these out loud. Before he took the test, that's a dependent clause. It has a subject, he. It has a verb, took. But since it begins with a subordinating conjunction before, it's a dependent clause, can't stand alone. Dan struggled with his homework, independent clause. So his father helped him, independent clause. Notice that we use a comma to separate that dependent clause only because it came first. Where would you place a comma in the following example? Because it was raining, we decided to go to the movies. Take a moment, do that on your own. And once again, I hope you can hear that pause right after raining. Because it was raining, pause, we decided to go to the movies. Dependent clause first, once again. Independent clause second. We do need a comma to separate that. Notice that if the dependent clause goes second, if it goes after an independent clause, we don't use a comma at all. And you don't hear that pause either. We decided to go to the movies because we were bored. No pause there because our dependent clause came last instead of first. Weird rule, I know. It's a lot easier to get in speech, but in writing, we have to notice that too. Once again, if we flip this, because we were bored, pause, we decided to go to the movies. But if we flip that, we decided to go to the movies because we were bored. No pause, no comma. Next. The next comma rule has to do with essential clauses or phrases. Essential, as we know in this COVID-19 environment, essential means that it's absolutely necessary. If you have an essential clause or phrase that's modifying a noun, that is, it's adding information that you need to know for the meaning of the sentence, they are not set off by commas. So for instance, the people who work in my office are loud. Notice that, once again, there are no commas, no pauses in that sentence. And the word that, for instance, is always essential. So the tiramisu that I had at Joe's was great. The home run ball that I caught at the game last night is on sale, or is for sale, something like that. The opposite of essential is non-essential. So same idea, you have a clause or a phrase that adds extra information to a sentence. However, if this information can be eliminated, can be deleted from a sentence, can be erased without influencing the meaning of the sentence, then we separate it with commas. It's non-essential. Non-essential clauses, again, always separated by commas on both ends. My brother, who lives across town, listen to those pauses, plans to throw a party. Now, the core of this sentence is the subject and verb. My brother plans to throw a party. That's the core of this sentence. The fact that my brother lives across town is not important for the meaning of this sentence. I put it in there as just extra information for my reader or my listener, right? Because it's non-essential, because it doesn't impact the true meaning of the sentence, I separate that by commas. The same is true if it comes at the very end of a sentence. So if I said something like this, I can't do it in this sentence because there's a misplaced modifier. I can't say my brother plans to throw a party who lives across town, because that makes it sound like the party lives across town. We'll look at misplaced modifiers later on in the semester. This one will help us with additional info. What happens if your non-essential phrase or clause comes at the end of a sentence? Steve said that he would propose to me on Valentine's Day. Again, that's the core of the sentence. That's the only thing that's important there. But we also have this added information, which is my favorite holiday. Notice, gets separated by a comma, and since it's at the end of the sentence, an end mark separates it on the other end. It's not essential, so we could get rid of it. Steve said that he would propose to me on Valentine's Day, period, end of sentence. That works too. A little bit of practice. Again, try these on your own. I'll read them out loud here, and then I'll go over answers too. I am planning a trip to Paris, which is one of the greatest cities in the world. The place I would most like to see is the Eiffel Tower. Pierre, who is one of my business contacts, will meet me at the airport. I'll tell you where I would put commas in these sentences. For the first one, I am planning a trip to Paris, comma, which is one of the greatest cities in the world. The fact that Paris is one of the greatest cities in the world does not change the meaning of this sentence, but it is a nice bit of information to add. It's non-essential, so I would put comma before that which. That clause does end the sentence. The place that I would most like to see is the Eiffel Tower. I would not put any commas in that sentence because I hear no pauses in that sentence. Once again, phrases or clauses that begin with that are almost always essential, and you won't separate them with commas. Pierre, comma, who is one of my business contacts, comma, will meet me at the airport. Again, the core of this sentence is Pierre will meet me at the airport. Who is one of my business contacts is just added information. Separate that with commas. Commas in a list. This is probably the rule that you actually learned first in grade school regarding commas. This is to avoid confusion, because it can be hard to know which items are single items in a list and which ones are multi-word items in a list if we don't separate them with commas. I'll show an example in a moment. What you should know with this as well is that we use a comma between each item in a list. The comma before the conjunction is usually required, so at the end of a list, but that can be omitted if there's no possibility of confusion. That's called the Oxford comma. We'll look at that in a moment. So look at these three sentences right here. We've got Alex, right? And Alex likes to date girls, as we see in these sentences, right? Check it. Last month, Alex dated Mary Ann, Lee, and Kim. Last month, Alex dated Mary, Ann, Lee, and Kim. Last month, Alex dated Mary Ann, Lee, and Kim. How many women did Alex date? As we can tell, the answer to that question is different for each sentence, right? In the first sentence, it's only two. We've got one woman named Mary Ann Lee. She's got two middle names. And then a second woman named Kim. In the second sentence, it's four different women. Alex is a player. Last month, Alex dated Mary, 1, Ann, 2, Lee, 3, and Kim, 4. That's what we see because those commas separate each item in the list. Last month, Alex dated Mary Ann, 1, Lee, 2, and Kim, 3. So based on the placement of those commas, that's where we see that we can kind of clarify any sort of potential confusing parts of a sentence or parts of a list. Commas should be placed in series of words, phrases, or clauses. So in the last one, we're just talking about single words that got separated, right? Mary is a word, Ann is a word, Lee is a word, Kim is a word. But the same is true for full phrases and full clauses as well. So check it. I'll do these ones as an example. Martina brushed her hair, put on her pajamas, and went to bed. I hope you can hear the pauses in those sentences once again. But here we have full phrases, right? Martina brushed her hair, that's one verb phrase. We get a comma there. Put on her pajamas, that's another verb phrase. We can put a comma here if we want. And went to bed is the last verb phrase that ends the sentence. It's a list of 3 items. There are 3 things that Martina did to end her day. 1, she brushed her hair, comma. 2, she put on her pajamas, comma. 3, she went to bed. Same thing is true for full clauses. She fell asleep and dreamed that she was a princess. she kissed a frog, and she rescued her prince. Don't get tricked right here. We do not need a comma before this first and right here, because we don't use commas to separate compound subjects or compound verbs. So she fell asleep and dreamed is one subject-verb combination. She fell asleep and dreamed that she was a princess is one full clause, comma, because she kissed a frog is another full clause, comma, and she rescued her prince is another full clause to end that sentence. So just keep that in mind. Lists can be single words. They can also be full phrases or full clauses. Same thing applies for adjectives that come in a list or a series as well. There are some exceptions to this rule that you should be aware of. The test you should know, if you can put the word and between the adjectives, or if they can be described in a reverse order, then use a comma. So for instance, if I said something like the happy, yappy, drooly puppy jumped on my leg, or something like that, right? Happy, yappy, and drooly are three different adjectives that are describing this puppy. We should put commas between each of them, because I could say the happy and yappy and drooly puppy jumped on my leg, right? Commas between each of those adjectives in that list. Or if you can describe them in reverse order, right? The drooly, yappy, happy puppy jumped on my leg. Again, use commas between. There are some exceptions when we're talking about sizes and colors in the English language. So the big blue house, you don't hear any pauses there, so no separation, no commas there. Same thing with numbers. Adjectives can be numbers as well. So 3 hungry kittens, no separation there. But notice a cranky, comma, bald man, you definitely hear the pause there. The last error that I'd like to talk through with you guys are comma splices. This is perhaps the most common comma error I've seen so far in your guys' writing. Comma splices happen when you join two independent clauses together with a comma and no conjunction. So if I said something like, Dan struggled with his homework, comma, his father helped him. A lot of people think that this is acceptable in the English language, largely because we speak this way. But when we're writing, we notice that this is a misplaced comma. This is an error right here that needs to get fixed. Technically, this is a type of run-on sentence. We need a conjunction there to keep it flowing, or we need to repunctuate this sentence. There are some options to correct a comma splice. One easy way is to insert one of your Fanvoice conjunctions between the clauses. So if I go back, Dan struggled with his homework, comma, so his father helped him. Dan struggled with his homework, comma, but his father helped him. Both of those work. Another option, probably the easiest and laziest way out, is to start a new sentence. Dan struggled with his homework, period, capital H, his father helped him. That works just as well. And that works for splitting run-on sentences as well, whether they're comma splices or not. Another thing that you can do is use a semicolon between the two independent clauses. We'll get to semicolons more in the coming weeks, but it is acceptable to replace this comma with a semicolon. That's the comma with a dot above it. I will note here that the only time you can use semicolons is if the two clauses are related. These two absolutely are, so it works here, but I couldn't say something like, Dan struggled with his homework, semicolon, his favorite animal is a turtle, right? Those two things aren't related. They need to be separate sentences. And we just got answers right there. And you can see how they work once again. Let's get some practice with these rules that we just learned as well. Once again, I encourage you to pause this video after I read these out loud and try these for your own. And then I'll demonstrate what I would do to fix these sentences. This semester, I'm taking calculus, physics, and economics. Calculus is my best subject. I'm certain I will get an A. Although I am very busy, I still find time to have fun. And last weekend, my brother visited me, and we went to a football game, a party, and a rock concert. Feel free to pause here and answer these for your own. I'll demonstrate in just a moment. So the first sentence says, this semester, I'm taking calculus, physics, and economics. Sounds like a senior at Milwaukee Lutheran High School, or maybe a college freshman. Here we have items in a list, 3 different courses that need to get separated because calculus physics is not one class. This semester I'm taking calculus, comma, physics, comma. I personally like to put that extra comma in there just to be clear. Again, we don't necessarily need one after physics, but I usually put it in anyway. And economics, period. Calculus is my best subject, comma, I am certain I will get an A, is a comma splice. Not allowed right here. What I would probably do here is use comma so. Again, multiple possible fixes for comma splices. I usually like to make them into compound sentences, so I will add a so right in here to give it that Fanvoice conjunction. Another possibility is to semicolon or period this one out. The third one's a curveball because it's correct the way it is. Although I am very busy, comma, I still find time to have fun is completely correct the way it is. Notice that we started with a dependent clause and finished with an independent clause. The fourth one needs a lot of commas. Last weekend, I would put a comma after last weekend actually, because that's an introductory element. My brother visited me, comma, because we have another clause right here, and we went. So comma after and. Went to a football game, comma, a party, comma, and a rock concert, period, because we have a list to end that sentence. Once again, I got this PowerPoint presentation from the Purdue OWL. Feel free to click into it off of this PowerPoint to bring it to their main website. Purdue OWL is a wonderful grammar resource on just about any topic in the English language. They also have a lot of great materials on MLA, APA, and Chicago formatting too. So if you ever have to cite research for a paper, we're going to use MLA for our research paper later on this semester. Purdue OWL is wonderful for that too. Last thing I want to demonstrate is a little bit of comma practice here. So this is really similar to what you guys did with proofreading at the end of last week. I did put grades on the gradebook for proofreading, and some of you know that you've got just some growing to do when it comes to grammar and proofreading, and that's totally fine. If you didn't do super well on that assignment's just going to be a drop in the bucket by the end of this semester, so there's a lot of room to grow and improve your score. Here's kind of your first opportunity to do that with commas. I hope you find this activity rather easy, just as you use your notes and as you've learned these rules. Let's look at it together here. There we go. In the following sentences, insert commas wherever they are needed. Some sentences will not need any commas. Feel free to use your notes on this exercise. I'd like to remind you that this one is not due until Sunday, so take your time on this one. I know some of you are still working on your proposal for your college application essay, so focus on that first and this second. There are 11 sentences for commas. Again, some of them will not need commas. Some of them are correct the way they are, so be careful on this one. The last 4 sentences are comma splices to fix. It does say you can correct them any way you can, so you can choose how you want to fix these last 4 sentences. I do promise you they are all incorrect in the sense that they are all comma splices, so feel free to use whatever fixes you like. Maybe switch it up a little bit from what you learned in your notes today to fix these sentences. I will be highlighting any errors that you still make on these or on this exercise, just so I can show you where some of your blind spots are when it comes to grammar. I did the same on proofreading practice from last week, so if you haven't checked out your feedback on there to see where some of your blind spots are on spelling and capitalization and end marks, I would definitely check that out too. Best of luck, and communicate with me over the weekend, just if you are struggling at all with this assignment.